Bernie Sanders is just off of a fundraising high. His Q4 numbers have essentially blew the roof off what he was doing previously, and his previous fundraising numbers had blew the roof off of what he was doing previously. It's to say that he has a certain momentum going about him, either in the polling or in fundraising. Both of those things, for the most part, bespeaks of support, and a lot of it. The question is why? In 2016, we were told people were just voting for Sanders because they hated Clinton. He was the hate vote for Clinton. But the problem is, even with Warren in the race, who's aping him and pretending to be him, sapping away a certain part of his base, still number 2. And again, number 1 in fundraising. He's more trusted on the various issues. And the one catch that Biden has on this one is electability. That's the one that Biden gets. But for the most part, if you ask, who do you trust more on this host of policy issues? That person, that name, becomes Sanders. So why does Morning Joe allow a man to get on here and flagrantly say the most ludicrous of things? That the reason that people are supporting Sanders have nothing to do with policy. I hate to tell you this, but I don't know why you would support Sanders if it had nothing to do with policy. The man gets on stage and for 40 minutes will talk only about policy. Only about policy. I'm going to introduce you to the gentleman on Morning Joe. He has a doctor in his name. That makes it all the more comical and all the more sad that you can, for the most part, twist yourself into pretzel to say the most ridiculous things on air. And shame on Morning Joe for sitting there and allowing it. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, subscribe. You can always support. PayPal, Patreon. I'm not going to keep this one long. I wanted to do one on Qasem Soleimani, but I want to get this one out the way first. This one is going to be just quick. Dr. Jason Johnson, and the doctor in this case is all the more, makes it that much more comical. Just because you have technical acumen doesn't necessarily mean you're a smart person, nor does it have anything to do with your morals for getting out there and saying something as utterly and entirely ludicrous as this. Sanders' shtick is policy. That's all he is. They're not saying, oh God, look at this sexy man. That's not happening. It's like, oh, look at this young, vibrant man. That's not happening. Vibrant, yes. It's just policy. He is railing against a system that he finds itself to be utterly bereft and contemptible. And people, feel that, but also they recognize that what he's talking about and the things that he wants to implement will materially benefit them. This is all policy. But I'm going to let the gaslighter on MSNBC try to convince you otherwise.
But yeah, so here's the thing. The idea there was going to be a progressive battle between Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, it was never something that had much resonance with me, because that presumes that Bernie Sanders supporters are supporting him primarily for policy purposes, and that's not really what's going on. A lot of his core base support like him because they see him as sort of a political and democratic savior type character. So he was always going to end up winning out any sort of policy argument, because in the end...
What does that mean? What does that mean? Oh, they don't like him because of policy. Nope, that's not what it is. It's not his policies. It's because they saw him as a democratic savior. I don't even know what that means. Savior in what sense? Savior perhaps in the sense that he was going to bring the Democratic Party back to an area where they were more in line with the working class and policies they're in. I guess my point is, the savior thing doesn't quite make sense unless you go with this notion that he is saving them from where they are now to something else. That something else is an ideological thing. That's a policy thing. I hope you understand what I mean. I don't know what he means by this outside of Sanders was going to save the Democratic Party. He was going to reinsole the Democratic Party. What do you mean by reinsole? What do you mean by savior? Explain that. At some point, you got to get to an ideological point that people are accruing around. Anywhere you are is where you're at, right? I don't know what the savior stuff means outside of saving them from where they are. Well, people have to have a general idea of what that means in the sense of policies, ideology, etc., etc. They're not supporting him just because of a vacuum. They're supporting him because of something he believes and something they are agreeing with. All he does is policy.
Today, people they like Bernie, and they're Bernie or bust kind of people. But I do think it's critical to remember this. We really are down to 4 people who have any chance. You've got Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, Mayor Pete, and Elizabeth Warren. Here's the thing.
The notion that you're going to say we're down to 4. Warren has been falling in the polls. She has been a falling rock. Her fundraising numbers, she was out there begging for cash. At one point, she had raised, $24 million, and now she's begging to try to get to $20 million. So this notion, therefore, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I got to be honest, you discredit yourself when you make this argument that Sanders supporters are not about policy. The crime bill, that's policy. The criminal justice plan that Sanders is putting out, that's policy. The climate plan that he's more trusted on, that's policy. Medicare for all is literally policy. For the people who just lump onto him just for that, that is a bill. That is literally policy. Expansion of Social Security, that is literally policy. Education plan, paying off student loans, that's all of these things are policies. And all of these things materially benefit the people who are supporting him. My point is, it is as logical and as logical can be. It is absolutely rational for somebody to support a candidate that is in their material best interest. When I get on television and I say that Morning Joe, right here, he has tens of millions of dollars in the bank. He's massively wealthy. The other person who's hosting the show is massively wealthy. Chuck Todd, all of these other newsheads that organize and integrate themselves into political community and class and everything else. These guys are of a different class. It makes all the sense in the world that when they make arguments on their networks, they will be talking at the behest of that class. It is in their material interest to do so. Yes, you would say they should have a philosophical responsibility to do the news and do it honestly, etc. Yeah, but their worldview is out of a class. I'm not shocked that they don't like Sanders. Doesn't shock me in the least. There may be some people who have ideological beliefs that overcome that, in which case this notion of them being of a particular class doesn't necessarily matter in the grand scheme of things because they themselves, for the most part, agree with your point. But in the same way that I think it's logical for Joe to back people who are in his material interests, it is also logical for people who support Sanders to do the same, especially if they know that he's been pushing for this for 40 years and that at the end of the day, he believes it. It is sad. It is sad that you will do this, that you will shame yourself in this way. Whatever degree that you got, whatever college that gave you this degree should be ashamed of themselves for giving you this degree, knowing that you will come out here and prostitute yourself for this and in this way. Sanders supporters aren't about policy. Get out of here. You're not even being serious. Like, share, subscribe. Thanks all.